Now, what we okay, so basically what we're doing, I'm just going over some of the uh, validated information of different herbs, different treatments. But then we're going to put together formulas like the herbal chemo. You know, I just want to give you basic information here, but eventually we're going to bring all this together, show you how to make a formula out of these different herbs. And so when you're treating someone, you have a general idea of why you're giving them these selenium and curcumin and turmeric and mistletoe and all that. You get an idea, but I'm going to put that together in a formula. Okay, so curcumin is another one. Now, curcumin is an extract of turmeric. It's a very good herb. It's probably the number one herb when it comes to dealing with cancer and boosting the immune system, your liver, and so on. That's available to us. I incorporate that into my treatment of leukemia, lymphoma, because it's found that curcumin is able to kill human lymphoma cells probably faster than any other single herb other than mistletoe. Preclinical studies reported that curcumin is a radiosensitizer, chemosensitizer for lymphoma. What that's talking about is it helps the vitamins, the herbs, and the diet to be able to attack the lymphoma cells. They work together. There's no panacea when it comes to treatment with herbs or vitamins. They all must work together in order to accomplish the whole. So curcumin helps the herbal chemo and the herbal ray treatment. They help each other out to work better. And they can help protect the body and protect the normal cells. Especially when Hodgkin's lymphoma, curcumin enhanced the lymphoma cells respond to herbal ray. Once again, herbal ray is nothing but these 150 watt light bulbs that are arranged in a box that you shine on you. But what makes it work is the DMSO. DMSO is a solvent that they get from pine trees. To give you an idea how it works, I could take DMSO, mix it with some herbs, and rub that on your skin, and it would take it right in your bloodstream. So if somebody had cancer of the throat or cancer of the stomach, and I can't get herbs in them, I have two recourses. I could give them rectal implant, or I can do a topical rub. And DMSO will penetrate right in. This is one of the big drawbacks with DMSO. From the medical perspective, they red flag it. They don't like lay people using it because it could cause some problems. Because it's such a powerful solvent that if it come in contact with a toxic source, you could send that right to a person's bloodstream. It's nothing bad with DMSO. I drink DMSO. But if it come in contact with something toxic, it could poison your system. So you have to be cautious. You have to know your product because you don't want to end up using it the wrong way and causing some other problem. Animal study report that curcumin retard lymphoma growth through several mechanisms. In mice with lymphoma, curcumin reduced the oxidative tissue in the liver by increasing oxidative enzyme activity. So when you're talking about this oxidative stress is that's oxidation, right? Now, a liver's doing that too. Your liver's doing this. That's oxidation. Overwork, overuse. Curcumin slows down that oxidation so they don't overwork the liver. And so, and the reason is, you heard of the word antioxidant. When you hear that word antioxidant, what do you think about? Anti means against. Oxygen means air. Okay, so now, why would you take something that is against utilization of oxygen? Like vitamin C, beta carotene, curcumin. Curcumin is a very powerful antioxidant. Why would you take that if it's antioxidant? You know if your cells don't have oxygen, they're going to die. So now you're taking something, vitamin C, beta carotene, green tea, curcumin, turmeric, antioxidant. Why would you do that? It's really misleading. And because we we look at the word and we misunderstand what it's conveying. When a person is real sick, and you hear them in the emergency room and you can hear that groaning. You know what I'm talking about? Are they rapid breathing? What are they living off? What air are they living off of? Carbon dioxide. They're not breathing properly. They're not breathing off oxygen. That rapid breathing is carbon dioxide. So what antioxidants does, it slows down the rapid utilization of oxygen. In other words, antioxidants make you see what I mean? Now what that does, it keeps you from using up your oxygen. The rapid utilization of oxygen to deplete your oxygen in your cells in your body, and the cells die. Antioxidants regulate the utilization of oxygen so you don't use it up so fast. So that word anti sounds bad, but that word in that case is good. Do we understand that? That's a good thing. Because otherwise you'd be breathing too fast, too rapid, and causing problems. So, animal studies report that curcumin retard lymphoma growth through several mechanisms. In mice with lymphoma, curcumin reduced oxidative stress on the liver. So it took away that stress off the liver. Another one is green. This is the product that we make, and you can make it also. There's many varieties of it. Green Power, Green Magna, Super Greens. But we make our own at our facility. We call the Issues of Life green vegetable juice, or the liquid transfusion. And Corilla, organic barley grass, wheatgrass, spirulina, parsley leaves, lecithin, broccoli, beet, and carrots, moringa, and also hydrogen peroxide, or water. So this is how we make it. And this is why we call it a liquid transfusion, because it transfused the blood. Now, all of these you're familiar with, probably not so much the hydrogen peroxide. In the dry form, we do not have the hydrogen peroxide in it. In the liquid form, we have the hydrogen peroxide in it. It must be the 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide. How many have experienced 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide? You put one drop on your hand, it's going to bleach and turn it white, pure white. And it itches like crazy. Okay? I mean, it itches, and you can't stop it from itching. That's food grade hydrogen peroxide. I know at our facility, we don't use baking soda yeast. We use hydrogen peroxide as a leaven. to ras all our bread and everything. And it's really good instead of using 11. But they know how to use it. So with that 35, typically 4% up to 9% is the hydrogen peroxide we're more accustomed to. That's what you're going to buy at the grocery store or supermarket. That really, except for topical purpose, that's about all it's good for. But this 35% is a high grade, food grade. And it really can oxygenate your blood cells. So that's what we use for somebody that really want to build their blood up. So once again, we dilute the 35% down because you cannot use 35% at that high level. You dilute it down with water. The next one is mistletoe. Mistletoe has been used either alone or in combination with herbal chemo and herbal ray, and it boosts your immune system, and it's very good for treating different types of cancer, especially leukemia and lymphoma. In laboratory study comparing mistletoe extract with herbal chemo, vancomycin, and blastin, which is vancomycin is nothing but periwinkle. You heard of the periwinkle plant? It's a well-known plant. I'll give you a little background about the periwinkle plant. Have you ever heard of St. Jude Children's Research Cancer Center? It's world famous all over the world, St. Jude, for treating leukemia in children. And it's the top of the totem poles for treating childhood leukemia all over the world. They was getting like 10, 20% cure rate. It was poor. Children just dying. They switched to a different chemo drug made out of periwinkle, vancomycin, and blastin. Now they get 95% cure rate. That is fantastic. What made a difference? That periwinkle plant. In the Philippines, they take about 3 to 5 leaves of the periwinkle, boil it in a cup of water and drink it. Has a high success rate of curing cancer. I take about 1 pound of periwinkle and I convert that into about a gallon of herbal chemo. Very strong stuff. And I make my own herbal chemo out of it. And it's very effective. I take that and mix that with my mistletoe and some other herbs, and I make my own herbal chemo. In a switch study test, they test effects of mistletoe treatment on the level of inflammatory cancer cell markers. They found that 21 of the 27 patients had been treated previously with chemotherapy and radiation therapy. The patient was between 45 to 79 years of age and were divided into 2 groups. Those treated short-term, 1 to 15 months, with mistletoe are long-term, 2 to 14 years. The long-term mistletoe therapy significantly lowered their cancer marker level. Clinical results showed that half of the B-cell lymphoma patients 6 to 12 received long-term mistletoe treatment had a continuous complete remission, whereas only 2 out of 15 patients in the short-term mistletoe treatment had complete remission. So they found that when they gave them for long-term, these people were able to, most of these people recovered from their lymphoma by using mistletoe. And I put mistletoe in all of my herbal chemo. Another one was melatonin. And this had to do with sleep. They found that if a person did not get enough sleep, that could increase their chances of developing leukemia and lymphoma. So they gave them different supplements, put them on a good program to help them sleep. And so I incorporate melatonin in my program, especially for leukemia and lymphoma. Laboratory studies indicated that melatonin significantly inhibits certain human lymphoma cells. And so by doing that, they found that just giving them the supplementation of melatonin, it can actually slow down and stop the lymphoma cells from proliferating. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, and I do this with all my class because I've got so much information to share, and then I use it for two purposes. I show you how to speak and how to speak up, because you're going to be doing this also. So I'm going to ask you to help me read, but I want you to read out, and then I'll comment on it as you go. Okay? I'm hoping I get some volunteers, because most people don't like to do this. They like to have me on the spot. So who would like to read this? Then I'll comment on it. But project your voice out so that we can pick it up, okay? Who would like to read that?
Use of the same treatment protocol in 12 patients with low-grade advanced NHL demonstrated a complete response in 50% and partial response in 50% of patients.
Okay, so in other words, when you follow the protocol of what I've just gone through, especially with low-grade Hodgkin's lymphoma, demonstrate a complete response in 50% of the patients and a partial response in 50% of the patients. So that's not bad. That's not bad percentage that you can get that 50%. Do you know what the response for chemotherapy is? 3% out of 100. Yes.
I asked a nurse who was working at the cancer treatment department, and I asked her how is the survival rate after 2 years. She didn't want to answer me. At last she said 2 to 3% after 2 years.
Yes. It's 3% out of 100, which is not good at all. Okay, someone want to read that?
Optimizing vitamin D, a Mayo Clinic study on 983 newly diagnosed NHL patients found that circulating vitamin D levels predict overall survival.
So what they did, they found that through this clinical research, they found that out of 983 newly diagnosed lymphoma patients, they found that when the circulating vitamin D level predicted their overall outcome. So that means if your vitamin D level is low, they knew you weren't going to make it. They knew that if your vitamin D level is in a normal level, you had a good chance of making it. So it predicted their outcome. So now, where you get your vitamin D from? The sun. So why are so many people suffering from vitamin D deficiency? And what type of vitamin D are we talking about? There's 3 different types, but principally 2 types that we're concerned mostly. D3 and D2. You know where they get D3 from? From the sheep, the wool of sheep, lanolin. That grows on the fur of the sheep. Now, D2 can be from a vegetable source. But D3 is the strongest, and probably the one we need to use if we are deficient. And a lot of people are not benefiting from the sun, even though we get a lot of sun. So we're suffering from that. Okay, you want to continue with this, sis?
Within 120 days of diagnosis, 44% of patients had vitamin D levels equivalent to 25 mg per milligram per milliliter. The former patients with low vitamin D levels were found to have poorer overall survival, whereas higher vitamin D levels were associated with better survival. That's direct.
Okay, so they found that people with low level of vitamin D was found to have poor overall survival level, whereas those with high level of vitamin D were associated with better survival level. So these are things we have to really consider, and when we put together our protocol. Mm-hmm.
In another study, lower vitamin D levels correlated with lymphoma among patients with
Surgeon
Sergio
syndrome.
and autoimmune disease associated with increased lymphoma.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it seems that it's always show up that when the vitamin D level was low, it seemed to always reflected that lymphoma, leukemia was going to develop. And so when you're working with somebody, have their vitamin D level checked. What we normally do is we put them on 50,000 IUs of vitamin D. We give them 5,000 IUs every day till they reach 50,000 IUs. And then after that, we'll break them down to more of a normal level, about half of that. But we want to get that D level up, yes.
So you use it together with vitamin C, together with, or
Yep.
only
No? Mm-hmm.
together with? Okay.
Yep. Okay, let's look at,
What do you use to do the diagnosis?
well, I work directly with the medical labs and stuff. I don't trust, they got all kind of stuff they claim, but to me, I believe in knowing what I'm doing, not guessing. I like to get medical tests and evaluation done. So I go and get medical lab papers done. So I know what I'm up against. They got all kind of gimmicks, like putting your foot in water and they're supposed to tell you something, hold something in this hand. I don't go for none of that. There are many ways, but God only sanctioned one way, and I just don't go for all those gimmicks. So I like to have medical evaluation. I like to work with the medical system. I do respect their ability because they have the technology they might have the technology to treat, but they can analyze. So I study the medical evaluations once I get it, and then I pretty much know how to make the adjustments. Okay, our next one we're looking at is multiple myeloma. Basically the same thing. The first one was leukemia. We dealt with cancer of the blood. Now we're looking at cancer of the bone marrow, which is the same thing, same disease. It's just that one is in the blood and one is in the bone. Bone cancer are a rare form of cancer that can affect any bone in the body. The two types of bone cancer is multiple myeloma and bone cancer sarcoma. About 2,000 primary bone cancer are diagnosed in the United States each year. Bone cancer can also happen when the tumor that started in other organs, such as the breast, the lung, the prostate, metastasize or spread to the bone. Multiple myeloma is the most common type of bone cancer. And so, once again, it's mostly centering in the bone. Now, I probably should have said this first. I want it to be known perfectly clear. I cannot heal no one. But I believe that God can do all things if we put our trust in Him. And I believe that in John 3:1-2, I believe this quotation. It said, "Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prosper." I don't have to question what is the wishes of God. People always say, well, I don't know if God really wants me to get well. That's a self-martyr right there. They for some reason, they have given up on getting well, and they're really trying to commit suicide. Because if you know the will of God, you don't question that. So when you're working with a person, beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health. That's a given. You don't question that. So you work toward that end. For I rejoiced greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in thee, even as thou walkest in truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. The mission of Christ was to heal the sick, encourage the hopeless, bind up the brokenhearted. This work of restoration is to be carried on among the needy, suffering ones of humanity. So we see clearly what is God's wishes. What we need to know is, Lord, how can I participate in this process? I tell all my students, I said, you must be the best you can be. And they hear that. I said, what you mean? You talking about competition? Yeah. You got to be the very best. Now, who are you competing against? Not your classmates. You're not competing against them. You're competing against yourself. You got to be better than yourself. And that means that the person you're competing against is yourself. You never compete against the next person. And so that means you got to push yourself. You got to study. Most people that really want to do this work, they will not study. It takes a lot to do this work at this level. There are different levels. Now you have medical missionary physicians and you have medical missionary. We have come to the time when every member of the church is to be a medical missionary. But not every member can be a medical missionary physician. That's a different calling. And it takes a lot of sacrifice. A lot. You don't have a personal life. You don't have a vacation. You don't do none of it. You eat for other people. You live, you dress for other folks. Everything you do is for other folks. So you don't have the choice to have your own personal life. That's given up. I know that for a fact. When I go to the grocery store, I'm shopping for other folks. I'm making sure what I get is a living witness. Are you following me? So, and no matter what time it is, you got to give service. So God called not only for your benevolence, but your cheerful countenance, your hopeful words, the grass of your hand, relieve some of God's afflicted ones. Some are sick, and hope has departed. Bring back the sunlight to them. So no matter how you feel, you must make that supreme sacrifice. It is a wonderful calling. I tell you what, I'm so thankful God called me to do this work. I get tired. I want to run from it. I want to get away from it. But I thank God every day He gave it to me. There are souls who have lost their courage. Speak to them. Pray for them. There are those who need the bread of life. Read to them from the Word of God. A medical missionary physician is a doctor and a preacher. If anything, he's more doctor than preacher. And every preacher that will seek to preach the living Word of God must be a doctor. And every doctor must be a preacher. And if any preacher chooses to do it without the medical word, he's not a preacher after the similitude of Jesus Christ. So it's important that we understand the role of a medical missionary physician. There is no difference between a medical missionary physician and a gospel pastor, ordained pastor. They're the same. In other words, the same duty applies to both. A medical missionary physician can be supported by the tithes. God never intended for us to have, for our doctors to go into private practice. Nobody's telling them that. The Spirit of prophecy makes it plain. They was never to go into private practice. Why did they go into private practice? Because they want to make more money. That's right. And when they abandoned the sanitarium work, They forced the people to go to the medical system, to the hospital system. The hospital system is a beautiful system, but it was not the system for God's people. God had raised up sanitariums to serve that purpose. And so God must have faithful men and women that are willing to pick up this work and make that sacrifice. In Ezekiel 37:7, so I prophesied as I commanded, and as I prophesied, there was a noise, and behold, a shaking, and the bones came together, bone to his bones. And when I beheld, lo, the sinew and the flesh came upon them, and the skin covered them above, but there was no breath in them. Then he said unto me, prophesy unto the wind, prophesy, son of man, and say to the wind, thus said the Lord God, come from the four winds, O breath, breathe upon these slain, that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came unto them, and they lived and stood upon their feet, exceedingly great army. So you've seen all these dry, dead bones, but through a process, God revived those bones. If God could do that to these old, dead, dry bones, what can he do for us if we have the faith and the patience to believe that he can do it? Pain is a common symptom of bone spurs in the shoulder. I'm bringing this out, and I'm still talking about bone cancer, but I'm using the bone spurs to show you how it developed. Bone spurs in the shoulder joints are most common cause of osteoarthritis. Bone spurs form in response to the wear and tear and breakdown of collagens in the shoulder joints from overuse, aging, and injury. So by constantly using your arm, you can break down the collagen in your shoulder. And then inflammation comes. When the inflammation comes, your body go into a self-protective mode. It said we must apply, because you're wearing out the collagen. It will start trying to rebuild it too fast, and you end up with calcium spurs, especially if you're not getting the right type of calcium. The body will rob calcium from other parts of the body to try to replace the calcium that is worn out in a particular joint. And that's not the way to do it. We should get calcium from our foods, not to take it from somewhere else. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? Let's take a woman. She's pregnant. Typically, what are the areas she has pain with? Tooth, hip, and back. Right? You know the reason why? That baby is sucking that calcium right out of the jawbone, out of the hip, and her back. The area's got the most calcium. It had the most need for calcium. The baby's taking it from her. And so those are the areas she's going to have a problem if she got a calcium deficiency. But it's robbing calcium from another portion to try to patch up another problem. So you don't want to get calcium like that. You end up with calcium spurs, calcium deposits. You want to get calcium from your foods you eat. Bone spurs that forms in the shoulder joints may not necessarily cause symptoms, but patients who have large bone spurs that pinch nerves or decrease space in the shoulder joints can experience significant symptoms. Therefore, a patient with shoulder pain should schedule to see an appointment so the doctor can do an assessment and see, is this coming from a buildup of too much calcium in the joints. The most common symptoms of bone spur formation in the shoulder is pain, according to the Mayo Clinic. So one is like if you take your shoulder and you hold it out like this and you rotate it, and you get up there and you say, oh, that's hurt. Oh, that's hurt. You can't hardly raise it up. You have a rotator joint here. And around that rotator joint, you can build up calcium around it, and it makes it hard to lift that shoulder up. You have to dissolve that calcium. You got to dissolve it. And I'm going to show you how to dissolve that calcium. I'm going to show you how the medical system remove that calcium. But then I'm going to show you how you can use natural means to remove that calcium. This occurs because the bone spurs in the shoulder joints can compress nearby sensory nerves in the shoulder joints that are located in surrounding the bone, muscle, and other soft tissue. These sensory nerves then send pain signals to the brain. Notice that the nerves, the sensors sense a problem. It sends a nerve signal to the brain. The brain then responds with the sensation of pain. Let's learn something else with this. So if the sensor, something is happening in your body, sense there's a problem, it want to notify the brain. The brain then said, well, the only way I'm going to get you a notice, I'm going to create some pain. It sends the signal of pain. Now, how can we use that for a good purpose? A person has a toe ache, and that toe is inflamed, it's hurting bad. How do you stop that toe from hurting? Well, let me change that. Person got a headache. Headache is pounding. How do you stop that head from hurting? You take a hammer and you hit them on their toe. Right? Will that stop the head from hurting? Oh, yeah. It will. No, it'll stop the head from hurting. When somebody hits you on your toe and you holding your head, what you going to do? I mean, before you get them back. But I want to know, when you got your head and it's, oh, my head is killing me. And somebody said, boom, on your toe, what you going to do? You're going to grab that toe and start rubbing that toe. You're going to forget about that headache. Right? What do you feel now? That toe. You don't feel a headache. Do you understand? I know you don't like it, but you stop your head from hurting. Now, what can we learn from this? Your body can only experience one pain at a time. One pain. You cannot have a headache and a toe ache and a backache at the same time. Your central nervous system, your brain, responds to one pain at a time. So if that be the case, I can figure out how I can stop pain by creating a lot of pain. I can take me some peppermint, I can take me some cayenne pepper, some ginger, some DMSO, a little olive oil. I can make that up and rub that over the pain area. Guess what's going to happen? That peppermint going to cause the pores of my skin to open up like that. That's that cooling feeling you feel. That cayenne pepper going to slip right down between the pores of your skin. Then your pores are going to close up, leaving that cayenne pepper up under the skin. Then it's going to start burning by the thousands of little particles. Your brain senses there's a problem with thousands of little particles of cayenne pepper burning. Your brain cannot respond to all of that. It shut down the pain sensors and stop the pain. You create pain to stop pain. That's why I said, hit them on the toe. You create the pain to stop the pain. Cayenne pepper do a better job. Did y'all understand the crude illustration? So if I really wanted to deal with somebody had a pain, I would give me a piece of cloth about that big, make me a cayenne patch out of the DMSO, say coconut oil, ginger, DMSO. I stick that right on their back. Now, what do they feel now? They feel that cayenne pepper heating up. They don't feel a headache. They don't feel a toothache because it's focusing in on that pain patch. That's how they do. That's how they do nicotine patch. That's how they do codeine patches. You know they got pain patches. Yeah, they just stick the pain patch on you, and it helps. Well, you make your own pain patch. Okay, now one of the best treatments for bone spurs is rub DMSO over the pain, then an ice rub. So you got bursitis. You can't not lift that shoulder up. You take a cup, paper cup. You fill that paper cup up with water. You put cayenne pepper and DMSO in it. You freeze that. You cut the top of that cup, paper cup off, exposing ice. And the first thing you do, you rub this real good with olive oil and DMSO. Then you take that ice and you just rub it into that shoulder right there. Keep doing that till you get it almost numb. Then you give them 100 milligrams of vitamin B3. Do y'all know what vitamin B3 is? Call it niacin. It's a capillary dilator. Have you ever had a hot flash? Niacin would give a man hot flashes. Okay, it makes him hot inside. It only lasts just a few and it's gone. How many ever taken niacin? I know I have. I can't stand it. It drives me crazy. But it's a wonderful vitamin. But it makes everybody have niacinamide rush, a flush. You know, what it is, this is your capillaries right here. Your capillaries are doing this. And through here, blood is flowing. As your heart beat, it's doing that. It's doing that. It's doing that. When you take niacin, a vitamin B3, it's doing this. So what is it doing when it's doing that? It's sending more fresh blood, oxygenated blood. That's going to turn your skin red when you take niacin. It's going to make you hot and itchy. For about 30 seconds, it's gone. That's a good thing. Well, you give that to them after you rub them down with their shoulder and rub them with that ice, with the DMSO, and that'll knock that bursitis right out the way and that calcium spur. Pain is typically described as a dull ache, but may be described as a sharp with certain movements. In other words, it could be a dull ache, but a certain movement could be really painful. Ice therapy is the best. Anytime you deal with bursitis, ice therapy is the best because that helps reduce the inflammation. And there's many different ways you can do this ice therapy. But the magic bullet is DMSO. That's the magic bullet. We're going to see how to use DMSO. I'm going to teach you how to make tinctures and extracts, essential oils. I do a magic trick. And I'm not a magician, but you're going to think it's a magic trick. You can give me 1 ounce of peppermint, 1 ounce of lavender, oregano, I don't care what it is, whatever you want, 1 ounce. And I turn that 1 ounce to 1 quart. And you will not be able to tell the difference from that 1 ounce. You think that's possible? So in other words, you go out and spend $15 for essential oils, 1 ounce, a bottle of essential oils, $15. I could take that 1 ounce, you pay $15 and turn it into 1 quart. And you will not be able to tell the difference in the strength. You know how long it takes me to do that? Maybe a minute. Maybe a minute. So that means that if you gave me $100, I could put you in essential oils, extracts, tincture business. Just give me $100 and I could do it. I could make you so much peppermint, lavender, oregano oil, you wouldn't know what to do with it with $100. All right? So instead of paying $15 for it, now you can sell it for $3 a bottle and make a big profit out of it. I know y'all don't believe that, but I'm going to show y'all how to do it. Because I demonstrate this everywhere I go. People can't believe it. Perfume. Take 1 ounce of the most expensive perfume in the world. Give me 1 ounce of it. You pay $3,000 an ounce. I could turn that into perfume, probably 2 quarts. And you will not be able to tell the difference from the original one. And it takes less than a minute or 2 to do it. It's just a chemical. It's not a trick. It's a chemical reaction that takes place. But the key is DMSO. DMSO may decrease pain from bone spurs caused by inappropriate footwear and many other reasons. Bone spurs can cause pain, debility in your foot, knees, shoulder, spine, back, anywhere in the body. But DMSO is the bullet that really works to knock that pain out. I'm not going to go through the history of DMSO. You can get this PowerPoint. You can read over that. But a man named Stanley Jacobson, he is the one that really did the most research in DMSO. He worked for the organ transplant facility in Oregon State University. They found that when a person did organ transplant, they had to transplant a liver, a kidney. It would go bad before they can ship it from one part of the country to the next part. So he decided to put it in DMSO, and it stabilized the cells and kept it from deteriorating. And that's how they transport organs now. They transport it in DMSO. It keeps it fresh. It keeps the cells from dying. So, and that's why I love it so much. It stabilizes the cells. Okay. So I talked about how to remove the spurs. So I'm not going to spend any time there. I'm just going to go right on. So I know I'm messing my friend up that's trying to follow me, but I'm going to get on through these slides here. Now if you use DMSO, you want the medical grade DMSO, the food grade, which we call pharmaceutical grade DMSO. Don't go and get the cheap DMSO out of some of your hardware stores, because it may be a solvent, but it may have some other chemicals in it that you don't want to put on your body. Now let's take a look. This is the one I was talking about right here, where you can see the DMSO. You can see what caused a buildup of calcium in the joints. So you're going to see the buildup.
Initially, we'll look at the shoulder joint itself. This is a view from the back. There's a spinal needle in the front, and water flows through the shoulder. Initially, the spinal needle will point to the superior labrum above and the biceps anchor.
Now we're looking right inside with a scope right inside of the shoulder joint. And he's got something like a little pencil that have a camera on it, and he's able to look at it so he can see what's going on inside the shoulder.
On the left, you have the socket, the glenoid, and this is the ball. Underneath the ball is the axillary recess, which is a little...
That ball is that rotator cuff.
Go on the back. We can see the bare spot, which is found characteristically in the back of the shoulder. And this is a rotator cuff above, and we can see a pristine rotator cuff attachment where the tendon above attaches to the bone. If there were a rotator cuff tear, you would see a hole right in here. But that is a very good looking cartilage and a good looking rotator cuff. Good view again of the biceps tendon coming in, attaching at the superior aspect of the socket or the glenoid and the labrum in the back. And we saw how it wraps around the front as well. At this point, we've done a relatively thorough inspection of the shoulder joint, and we'll take the scope out of the shoulder and reintroduce it on top of the rotator cuff in the subacromial space. The next order of business is to remove any soft tissue, so this electrocautery is used to remove...
Now, he's going to remove the soft tissue. That soft tissue is building up around the rotator cuff between the joints. That soft tissue should not be building up there. That's why he's going to remove it. That's why when you get ready to move your shoulder, that soft tissue is interfering with you to move your shoulders up. It's what we call calcium deposits. He's calling it soft tissue, but it's calcium deposit with phosphorus in it. He's going to scrape all that out.
Bursa and soft tissue and ligament which covers the bone. Above us now is the acromion, which is where the bone spur forms, and below us is the rotator cuff.
You can see he's scraping off that soft tissue, which is the calcium deposits in the bone. So that's why you can't move it up. It's interfering with your bone to be able to flex itself up. He's scraping all that out. Now that's the same kind of calcium deposit you build up in your arteries, and you get plaque. And now it's in the joints. It's not in your arteries. Once he scrapes all that out, you'll be able to move your shoulder up with no problem. It's obvious in the situation we have, we cannot do this from this perspective. But we can do a better job than this. They're going to have to give this person prednisones or steroids or whatever pain medicine, because this is a very painful process until it heals back. And it's a good possibility it's going to come back and come back. But you can accomplish the same purpose without an invasive treatment. And that's why we use the DMSO as a solvent. The DMSO and vitamin E oil, by rubbing vitamin E oil over the shoulder, or wherever the pain is, then applying a DMSO over that area. The solvent, you know what a solvent is, right? That's a paint thinner is solvent. Gasoline is a solvent. Water is a solvent. That means it can break elements down. DMSO is the strongest solvent we have. It will dissolve the calcium and phosphorus plaque. It would turn into a liquid and flush it out of the system. And so instead of scraping it out, we can do a topical treatment and accomplish the same purpose. Any questions on that? Do you understand what I just talked about? And then at the same token, it's going to help with the pain. DMSO is hot. When you apply it on your body, it's going to get hot. If I took this glass of water right here, put an ounce of DMSO in this water right here, this glass is going to get hot like you boiled it. It'll get hot. You touch this glass is going to be hot. Just by mixing DMSO with the water. That's because now you're mixing this. DMSO is a high oxygen. The water is a hydrogen and carbon. DMSO is a compound, hydrogen and oxygen. By mixing them together, you make a compound oxygen. And it will definitely heat up like that. So now, let me see if I can go back and try to explain it. This is a joint right here. Soft tissue built up. Where that soft tissue comes from is overuse, inflammation, wearing the collagen out. And so now we can see that this soft tissue is building up on the joints. There it is, building up on the joints. It's going to take time, overuse, and over years, you're going to build it up. Now you got a calcium spur. And eventually, calcium spur open the door for some type of bone problem, bone cancer, arthritis, rheumatism, you name it. And in other words, after it build up, now this calcium needs to be scraped off, or else you got a spur, either in your foot, your heel, or your shoulder, and every time you move, it can be painful. By applying DMSO and vitamin E oil over it, you can dissolve this calcium spur. Multiplied myeloma. This type of cancer is a cancer that develops in the bone marrow, or the bone plasma cells that infiltrate the bone by producing lesions throughout the skeletal system and the vertebrae, the skull, the pelvis, the ribs, the backbone. It can go anywhere. The plasma cells are among the least common type of white cells in the bone marrow. So we're going to take a look now at the bone metastasis, and we're going to see how it spreads. Let's see if I can get this to play. Yeah. We're going to look at the causes and understanding how it developed.
Men with non-metastatic prostate cancer are commonly treated with androgen deprivation therapy, or ADT, for various reasons, including biochemical relapse after primary therapy. Duration of response, including time to progression with ADT, typically ranges between 2 and 10 years. Thus, many prostate cancers ultimately become resistant to ADT and continue to grow. This is referred to as castrate-resistant prostate cancer. Over 80% of men with castrate-resistant prostate cancer will eventually develop bone metastases. These can lead to important clinical consequences, such as bone pain, functional impairment, and increased mortality. In men with castrate-resistant prostate cancer, predictors of bone metastases include high absolute PSA levels, rapid increases in PSA levels, or short PSA doubling time. Currently, there are no FDA-approved treatments to delay the time to develop bone metastases. Thus, prevention of bone metastases for men with castrate-resistant prostate cancer represents an area of unmet medical need. Bone is a particularly fertile site for the development of metastases, as first described by Stephen Paget in his seed and soil hypothesis. Multiple factors influence interactions between the tumor cells, the seed, and the bone microenvironment, the soil, to promote the development of bone metastases. Prostate cancer cells shed from the primary tumor enter the circulation and release growth factors, cytokines, and other proteins which promote adhesion and proliferation to the bone. Circulating prostate cancer cells initially adhere to cells lining blood vessels in bone marrow, following which these tumor cells are actively recruited to the bone microenvironment by multiple factors, where the cells preferentially adhere to areas of increased bone turnover. Furthermore, interactions between tumor cells and the bone microenvironment foster the development of bone metastases. These interactions ultimately result in excessive osteoclast and osteoblast activity, which in turn releases multiple factors that may further stimulate tumor growth and bone destruction. Additionally, ADT increases bone resorption and subsequently releases multiple factors in the bone microenvironment. This may create more fertile conditions for the development of bone metastases. The development of bone metastases in men.
Okay, so now if there's inflammation in the bone, then the body will try to compensate by producing more collagen, more bone surface to repair the damaged bone. This opened the door for the development of abnormal cell growth because of the inflammation. Now we're going to look at, as we continue to look at that, we're going to look at how to reverse that.
Bone destruction due to bone metastases or multiple myeloma and bone loss due to hormone ablative therapies can lead to serious skeletal complications. Research has shown that rank ligand is an essential mediator of the underlying biological mechanism of cancer-related bone diseases across tumor types. Bone is a dynamic tissue which undergoes constant remodeling through the coordinate.
Now this is what I want you to see. Bones are a very unique structure. It is constantly remodeling itself, just like you remodel your house. And so there's a lot of damage that's taking place on our bone surface. That surface phosphorus matter on the bone, calcium and phosphorus, is constantly being scraped off, but it have to be replaced. If for some reason it is not systematically replaced, inflammation can develop, bone spurs can develop, calcium deposits can develop because it's not being scraped off. Now watch this and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Activity of specialized cells called osteoclasts.
You see the osteoclast is falling behind the bone as it being deteriorated, and it's replacing the collagen, the phosphorus, to repair the damaged bone.
And osteoblasts. Osteoclasts are specialized cells that resorb bone.
So that's the osteoclast. It's absorbing the old bone matter. It's consuming it, just like a bulldozer cutting the road. But right behind it,
Well, osteoblasts are cells.
the osteoblast is following right behind it, repairing what the osteoblasts have done, the damage has been done.
Or new bone. Osteoblasts express rank ligand, which binds to rank, a receptor on osteoclasts and osteoclast precursors. This binding promotes differentiation, activation, and survival of osteoclasts.
So do we see that? Do you see your bone is in a constantly attack of being scraped off and repair? If the repair work is not done, it's going to pile up and pile up to end up with calcium spurs, calcium deposits, bone tumors, and so on. bursitis. The reason you can't lift that shoulder because all of that calcium has built up between the joints around the rotator cuff. How do you dissolve that calcium, that buildup? We talked about how would you, somebody tell me how you dissolve that. And how do you do it?
So you rub the DMSO there.
What do you rub first? You've got to put something on first before the DMSO. DMSO is a very quick solvent that absorbs quick. So quick that it can irritate your skin or mucous membrane. So you got to slow down the penetration of it. And I said an oil, you put an oil on first. What was it? Vitamin E oil. So now by putting vitamin E oil on it first, that slows down the penetration of the DMSO. So it won't penetrate so fast. And hardly no time you can dissolve that calcium plaque. We even have dissolved plaque in the cardiovascular system by using powdered papaya and DMSO and putting a patch over the heart. And we can go in and dissolve that plaque that's building up in the arteries. It is a fantastic thing. But like I said, once again, it's frowned on by the medical system. So you have to be very careful with it. Where I live, it's pretty legal. They don't have much control of it. Some countries don't even allow you to get DMSO. So normal plasma cells make up only a small percentage of the cells in the marrow. But in multiple myeloma, one plasma cell undergoes a malignant or life-threatening changes and begin to multiply excessively. So you, once again, I don't know if we have We're going to go back up here. Okay. I'll just take this one right here. Let's just say okay, let's just say that's the person's leg. And okay, just a crude bone. Okay, now you have plenty of regular bone cells, and they're making up the bone marrow. They're making up the bone marrow. But you may have just one melanoma, bone cancer cell. These cells are regulated. They're regulated to go through mitosis. This here melanoma has no regulation. In other words, there's a law that determines how fast these regular bone cells are to replicate. There's no law that apply to the melanoma cell. Can you apply that from a spiritual perspective? These bone cells here would be like obedient child of God. Do we have a law that governs him replication? Yeah, he does, don't he? The law governs everything about him. But here, this melanoma cell is not subject to the law of the body. In other words, that the body has a law that these bone cells only to replicate at a certain time at a certain rate. Here, this Melanoma cells said, I don't believe in that. I replicate when I want to replicate, as much as I want to replicate. So what it does, it just keep on replicating. And eventually, it suppressed the healthy cells. That's what that was talking about. All right? So when that happened, it have changed the whole constitution of those bones. Now, eventually, it's going to spread and go other places. This has three serious effects. First, it disrupts the production of red blood cells. Now, as this continued to happen, remember now, in here, in the bone marrow, you have the birthplace of your stem cells. Your stem cells is your parent cell. That's your mom and daddy cells. All cells is made from the stem cell. So your red blood cells, your white blood cells, they all begin here in the stem cells, in the bone marrow. But because these melanoma cells are producing so fast and so many, it's interfering with the stem cells to produce good red blood cells. Now your red blood cell count go where? Down. And when that happens, you become anemic. And now you're weak and you're tired. So it's affecting that. Now what else did it say? You become weak, you become tired, and it says the platelets. The platelets are also in here. They in here also. And you got them. What's the purpose of those platelets? That's your clotting factor. That's for clotting. So if you bleed, it do what? Stop you from bleeding. But here, because the melanoma cells are growing so fast, it's interfering with the production of what? Your platelets. And if you do not have enough platelets, then you're subject to what? Bleed. That's why melanoma patients, leukemia patients could bleed out the eyes, out the nose, out the ears, anywhere. They could bleed like that because of lack of platelets. And the reason the lack of platelets is because the rapid production of those cancer bone cells. The excessive plasma cells cause destruction of the bones. So now the bones are becoming brittle, subject to break real easy. All of this is because the whole balance has been disrupted because of the rapid production of those bone cells. Third, the remaining normal plasma cells produce fewer antibodies, and this reduces resistance to infection. So now this person here, he cannot produce enough antibodies because he needs the stem cells to produce more white blood cells. The stem cells can't do it because they're being crowded out. So now they're more subject to what? Infections, fevers. This is all before you even get to treatments. And this is what I tell people. People want to jump in and say, just teach me how to treat the disease. They have no concept about what is taking place. That's the reason why you can't treat, is because you don't know what's going on. You need to learn the fundamentals first, and then you can understand the right herbs and the right application. These lesions cause destruction of the bone tissue. In late stages, cancer infiltrate the body organs such as your liver, the lymph, lung, adrenal, kidneys, and gastrointestinal tract. And it continued to do destructions in the body. In most cases, when you get to that point, it's a very poor prognosis. With a low blood count, that person's going to be tired, weak, not going to want to eat, and they're going to continue to suffer severe malnourishment. And so now you've got not only the melanoma, you've got the anemic condition, you got a low platelet count, you got a fever because of a low ability to produce white blood cells. So you got to increase those white blood cells, you got to increase those platelets, you got to increase those RBC red blood cells. That's along with trying to reduce the melanoma. So this is why one little treatment is not going to do it. You're dealing with now other side issues that's got to be addressed, and we're going to try to do that before our time go out. So doctors would measure your red cells and white count, and they can tell you if it's low. And you need to learn how to follow that, your medical papers. White blood cells. These cells help your body fight infection. A low white blood cell count, a leukemia, leaves your body more open for infections. So now what's happening is these leukemia cells are counterfeit white blood cells. They're counterfeit white blood cells. They are white blood cells, but they are renegades. The good white blood cells are being suppressed, and now your white count go up, which forces your red count down. Your body try to keep a balance. If your white count go up, it's going to force your red count down. But it shouldn't be like that. Your red count should be up and keeping your white count at a balance. But because that white count is so high, abnormal white cells are so high, forces your red count down. So now the doctors must give you a red blood transfusion to try to equalize the abnormal white count. And you find yourself getting transfusion to try to do that. That's a vicious cycle that is not going to work. So, and this based what I was talking about. You have your RBC up here, which is your red blood count. You have your platelets and your WBCs. It should be like that. Your red count should be the highest, then your platelet, then your WBC, your white blood count. But what happened is your red count is forced down and your white count goes up. They change places because there's a counterfeit white blood count. It's taking the place of the healthy one. If there was a healthy white blood cell, it would not continue to go through mitosis. It wouldn't keep replicating. It's controlled by law. But this white blood cell, which is a counterfeit, is not subject to the law of the body. It do what it want to do. God's standard he put in the body don't mean nothing to him. He's like the devil. He said, I do my own thing. You don't tell me what to do. God said, I put a law to govern the body. He said, I ain't caring about that law. He do what he want to do. The decrease in blood cells count does not occur right at the start of chemotherapy because the drug do not destroy the cells already in the bloodstream. These are not dividing rapidly. Instead, the drugs affect new blood cells that are being made by the bone marrow. What this is talking about is that chemotherapy do not destroy the cells that is already developed. Now, please understand this. Chemo do not destroy the cells that is mature cells. Chemo only destroy fast replicating growing cells. That's why when you get it, it affects your fast-growing cells, your hair, your skin. All the fast-growing cells it attacks. It do not attack the slow-growing cells. So that means that when you take chemo, all the old cells, no problem. But the little baby cells that are developing, that's who it's going to get because they're replicating too fast. So now the reason, well, it seemed like if that was the case, which it is, looked like chemo would be a good thing because it don't affect the old cells, your old liver cells, your old kidney cells. It don't affect them. Your old brain cells don't affect them. It affects your little baby liver cells and little baby kidney cells. Well, what is the problem? The problem is that those old cells are going to die and be replaced by those young cells. Are you with me now? Every cell has a lifespan. Everyone in this room right now is nothing but an infant, a baby. There's not a 7-year-old child in this room. Medically, no one in this room is over 7 years old. From a scientific viewpoint, the human body never lived from 7 to 11 years old. Every cell in your body is replaced. Every organ is replaced. You are a brand new person every 7 years. That's medically. Now, you don't feel like it, but they know they got every cell, every tissue calculated how long it's going to live and die and replaced. No cell is immortal. So that means those old cells are going to die. Now it's depending on that next generation to take the place. There's no generation because you wipe them out with the chemo. And that's why, when you take chemo, sometimes you say, well, this ain't bothering me. I can handle this. And they go on pretty good. And they said, then after a little bit, they said, hey, this stuff is bothering me. Those old cells has died. Now you're depending on them young cells. Chemo done affected them. So don't be deceived. 6 months from now, they're probably dead. And they said, the doc said, well, yeah, cancer's in remission. I was like, well, praise God, doctor. I was waiting for that news. My cancer's in remission. They letting everybody, calling the family, everybody rejoicing. The chemo worked. It's in remission. 6 months, they're dead. What happened? The old cells died out. And now the young cells has been infected by the chemo, and it ain't nothing left. And you end up dying. And the doctor said, well, we didn't get it all. It's back. Chemo and radiation therapy can also damage the bone marrow and the stem cells. So if it's going to damage the stem cells, that means that are the cells that's going to replace everything. And that means you ain't got nothing to replace. Chemo affects the risk of secondary cancer. It is not the primary cancer that kills people. It is the metastasis, the secondary cancer that kills people. So when you go there and the doctor said, well, you got cancer, it's still localized. You got a good chance. You do. But if that cancer spread and goes somewhere else, or that cancer go into remission and then spring up somewhere else, then you're on death row. Because that metastasis is much greater than the primary cancer. So just be aware of that. There are certain foods and vitamins that can help. We talked about platelets count. Your platelet count is down. You're subject to bleed to death. Papaya leaves, juice, is the most effective treatment for low platelet count. Dengue fever, malaria, than anything we have in this universe. Y'all familiar with that, some of you, right? Y'all should be familiar with papaya juice. Just juice the leaves of papaya, not malaria. And I had it, me and my son was down in South Pacific. People was coming, had a plague down there. He didn't get it. He almost got it, but I got it. They went in. I knew about the leaves, but they had already fixed it up for me. I drank about an ounce of it. It was the nastiest stuff in my life I ever drank, but I got it down. Next morning, I was clear. Knocked it right out, knocked the fever out, knocked everything clear. It is fantastic. So if that platelet count is down, get the papaya juice. Juice those leaves and let them drink a little of it. That would solve, and then put them on a good diet. Give them some wheatgrass. Wheatgrass is also very good for low platelet count. Once again, this is that liquid transfusion. Wheatgrass fortifies the blood. Pumpkin is really good because it raises and elevates the platelet count. And that's half a glass of fresh pumpkin juice, or eat some pumpkin seeds, can help with your platelet count. Spinach. This is a good green because it's almost identical to the human blood. Drink about half a cup of spinach juice. I like to mix it with some beet juice. It's high in vitamin K. Vitamin K is a clotting factor vitamin. Normally I would give 400 mcg of vitamin K twice a day along with these green juices to give a little more boost to the platelet count. Vitamin C and iron works together like twins. So if your iron count is low, then add vitamin C to your blackstrap molasses, and that will accelerate the boosting of your platelet count and your RBC, or low blood count. Another good one is Indian gooseberries, which is one of the better ones. It's one that I found when I was in India. Gooseberries are really good for low platelet count and boosting your immune system and your iron count. Sesame seed oil is another one. It's good to reduce free radical damage, inflammation in the body, improve blood circulation. It increases your platelet count. So that's sesame seed oil. Beetroot juice. This is like a liquid blood tonic. So it's rich in natural iron and antioxidant. And so once again, by doing that, you cannot increase your anemic condition without protein. So you're going to need some protein. So soak you about 5 or 6 almonds together and let them eat that twice a day. And that, with that protein, with the rest of the things we talked about, you get your platelet count back up and your red count up at the same time. And that will help you a lot. So remember now, don't forget now, you've got to get that platelet count up. And you've got to get your RBC count up. So with a fever, once again, you sponge that person down with temperate apple cider vinegar. Give that person a cool enema, and that will make a world of a difference. We're going to show you, before I stop, I got about 35 minutes and I'm going to stop. I'm going to show you how to do some enemas. So a lot of this arthritic pain that is associated with bone cancer is probably coming from inflammation of the bone. And it may not be pure arthritis. It just may be inflammation. Multiple myeloma progress, symptoms of vertebrae compression may become acute. So, in other words, if those vertebrae in the back is compressed, that means any sudden movement is going to be very painful. You got to stretch that vertebrae. And I wish I could show you how to do that. I'm not a chiropractor, but I do know how to stretch the vertebrae. I lay them down and I can twist them a certain way and stretch the vertebrae, which is really good to relieve a lot of pain. Some back pain is associated with kidney, inflammation in the kidney, especially if they get it right here, right there on the side. That's got to do with kidneys. And so if they're not drinking enough water, then a lot of acid can build up in the kidneys and they can end up with a lot of back pain, but it's really kidney pain. So you need to make sure you keep them good and hydrated. So now, what can we do about all this? First, I've given them some aloe vera from the live plant. I've given plenty of cabbage juice, broccoli juice, turnip green juice, beet juice, and carrot juice. I would mix all that together. And I let them juice that. And you want to get a good juice machine, not one particular like this. This is a centrifuge juice machine, which is not for therapeutic purpose at all. This is for kitchen. You want to get a press or grinding type juice machine, not a centrifuge. The centrifuge destroys the oxidizing enzymes in the vegetable. Spin it out and separate it. You don't want that. Get one that press it or grind it out, and that's a better for it, more wholesome. Also, you want to do supplemental treatments such as a fever bath, salt glow, steam bath, colonic. These are techniques you must know. If you're going to do medical missionary work, you've got to know how to do a colonic. You're not going to do enemas, salt glows, salt bath, fever bath. Those are given. You've got to know how to do that. Okay, so let's see what this play. If not, this basically all I'm doing is just showing talking about how to do a salt glow.
We wet the sheet in cold water and we set it aside. We patted the seat real well with a very thick cloth, and we made sure we patted the back of the seat to protect Gene from any additional heat that has been generated from the skillet, electric eye. So this is just what we call a Russian steam bath. There's many fancy ways of doing it. But I always like to train all my students to do it the old-fashioned primitive way. Because if you're out going door to door, you're meeting people, you might not have a steam tent. I mean, you got to know how to improvise. And so just take a piece of plastic, get a pot of hot boiling water, whatever you want in your steamer, put it under the seat and sweat the person. Always be able to improvise and come up with ways to give treatments. This is one that's real important. Most people do not know how to give a castor oil pack. They think it's just a matter of just taking some castor oil, putting it on a piece of cloth. But there's a really scientific method of how to do a proper castor oil pack. A lot of times they take a little thin piece of cloth. It should be probably about twice as thick as this. And I would say about more like that. And you saturate that really good with castor oil. And then you slightly just wring it out a little. Don't wring it dry. You'll see it here in a moment. Castor oil is really good because it will soften up hard tissue, hard growths and tumors in the body. It will soften it up so the body can break it down so it makes it easy for the body to remove it. So it's good for arthritis, colds, cysts, flus, any type of growth in the body. And apply it real good. Don't have it dripping and running over the person's body. Wrap that real good, secure it real well. It will increase and eliminate toxins, stimulate the liver, relieve pain, reduce inflammation, and stimulate the lymphatic system. So all of this is just in a plain little castor oil pack. I'm going to let you look at what it looked like. And then it'll be ever fixed in your mind how to properly do a castor oil pack.
It boils down to the fact that whenever you begin to feel sick or run down or out of sorts, put on a castor oil pack. When you go to bed at night, it helps you sleep. It helps eliminations and just helps get your strength back. So, let me show you how to prepare a castor oil pack. Castor oil packs are remarkably simple. They're really nothing more than wool flannel soaked with castor oil laid against the skin. Now, castor oil packs are also pretty messy, and the size and placement is also very important. You begin with a piece of wool flannel, 18 to 24 inches, that when folded down 3 to 4 thicknesses is about 10 to 12 inches. You can get wool flannel at any store that carries Casey products. You can also get it at your fabric shop, or if all else fails, just use an old wool blanket from around the house, a piece of one. You'll also need a plastic or rubber sheet, or anything waterproof, to protect the bedding from the oil. Here you see an electric heating pad, a couple of old towels, 2 large safety pins, and some plastic sheeting. Trash bags or dry cleaning covers are great, just so it's long enough to wrap around the body when you're going to put the flannel. And you'll need at least a pint of castor oil. Now, most drugstores sell the smaller size castor oil, but that's not really enough to get started. Any store that supplies Casey products will have the larger size, and you'll probably save money in the long run anyhow. Now, before you get started preparing the pack, it's a good idea to get your bedding ready. This is so when you put on the pack, you can just lie down. Take a plastic sheet and lay it down on the bed. Then put a towel over that. Now that that's ready and waiting, let's get back to preparing the pack itself. The first thing you do is fold the flannel to the proper size. The readings suggest putting the pack in different places depending on the individual situation, but the most common place is over the liver and gallbladder, then extending a little bit over the abdomen. You can see on this diagram that the liver is on the right side of the torso, under the lower part of the rib cage. So your flannel will cover the liver, the gallbladder, and the abdomen very nicely. Now, the next step is to soak the flannel in castor oil and then warm it. One method is to take a baking dish like this, lay in the flannel, and just pour on the castor oil. Then pop it in the oven.
And it looks really simple, and it is, but make sure you make it really thick and saturate it real good because the castor oil will penetrate deep into the system.
Then, when the castor oil is warm, just take it out and lightly wring the excess oil out of the flannel. You have to be careful of this because the oil can burn you. It's only supposed to be warm. The readings say that the flannel should be saturated with the oil, but not dripping. Now, let's watch a castor oil pack being applied. As you can see, the pack is being placed directly over the liver and then extending over the upper abdomen. Then the pack is covered with plastic. Next, a heating pad is placed over the plastic and the pack. And then finally a towel is wrapped around and fastened with a couple of safety pins.
And do it.
So, like I said, really get that castor oil pack down because that's going to be really important. Just don't take one little thin sheet, wet it with castor oil. That's not going to work at all. Make sure it's thick and saturated real good with castor oil. Now, we're going to look at, yes. Repeat that, sis.
Is it possible to use this packed sheet with oil several times for the same person?
Yes, as long as you use it on that same person, you can repeat it. Mm-hmm. Okay, now let's go and look at enema. These are associated treatments along with doing all the other things.
And doing the enema, make sure that you fill your enema bag up with your proper solution. Whether you're doing a coffee enema, a herb enema, or a water enema. Then make sure that your tip and your cutoff valve is cut off so the solution won't run out before you insert it. Then just before you insert the tip into the rectum, cut the inflow valve on and let the water run free, taking any excess air that's in the tube out before you insert it in the rectum. Then cut the tip off, get you a good lubricant, and lubricate the tip real well before inserting it. And then insert the tip real slow into the rectum. And then ask your patient to let you know when he's ready to go to the bathroom.
Now, this is a medical mannequin I'm demonstrating. It's not a real person. But I have mannequins that you can actually give an enema and put water in them, and they expel just like a real person. This one is just a demonstration how to insert the tip. And once again, it's part of those treatments that you must know how to do. And preparing your vegetables, juices, which you're going to have to do daily. It's a lot of work. A lot of work. Also, how to give a salt rub. I don't know if this is may not play, but this is a salt rub, which is kind of like a salt massage over the whole body. It's really for cleaning out your pores of your skin, relaxing your central nervous system, relaxing the lymphatic system. It's also good for lymphatic draining. Sometimes the lymphs get blocked and it massages the lymph system. It is a really good treatment for relaxation. I'll show you sometime. I hate this thing playing. I want you to see the effects of it, but for some reason it didn't pick up. But you'll get a chance to see it when I deal with cancer. And then plenty of exercise.
Exercising to tolerance, but never to exhaustion. The more we exercise, the better will be the circulation of the blood.
Another good herb is graviola, soursop. That's another herb we incorporate with lymphoma. And I'm just about a few more minutes. I'm gonna get ready to stop. Soursop is a well-known herb in the tropics. Most people are familiar with this. Now here's one that is people are beginning to learn more about is hemp seed oil, which is cannabidiol. I use a lot of cannabidiol, and I know a lot of God's people don't understand the mechanism of it, because they know that cannabidiol is marijuana. I don't use marijuana. I don't use medical marijuana. Hemp seed comes in two different ways. You can have hemp with the THC, which is a narcotic. You can have the one that they have removed the THC, and you got the CBD. The CBD is the medical part. The THC is the narcotic. So I don't give nobody any hemp oil have the narcotic in it. But I can tell you what, it is one of the best herbs in the world. You got somebody in pain, put 9 drops on their tongue twice a day, it's going to knock that pain right out. And it won't get them high. But make sure you get the type with low to no THC in it. I'm going to show you, maybe before I leave here, how you can stop seizures, grand mal seizures. In one day, I mean, this girl was having over 100 a day. In one day of just taking this cannabidiol, stop those seizures. Probably the most important herb that I will talk about is the one I saved for last, and that is the yew tree, the Pacific yew tree. They grow in Asia, and they grow on the Pacific coastline. This is the #1 chemo herb in the world. They make a chemo drug out of it called Taxol. Some of you may have heard of Taxol. It's the #1 chemo drug in the world. They make it from the Pacific yew tree. I use this in my formula, my herbal chemo. So, but it is a very good herb for dealing with cancer. The big problem with it is that it takes a lot of trees to make a few ounces of this very powerful drug. So what they did, they're making a synthetic copy. And it don't work. It's one of the most deadliest chemos in the world, but it don't work. But the natural one that they make from the tree works fantastic. So if you're dealing with ovarian, female-related breast cancer, this is the herb you want to use. But get away from that Taxol. Taxol is a synthetic copy. That they don't work. Okay. So I'm going to speed up toward the end here. I'll let you listen to the history on it right here if it plays. It may not play. Okay, so it's not going to play. I probably should have imported those before I stopped. But anyway, they give you the history on it, how this herb worked and why it's so effective. So I put that in my herbal chemo. Another one is partially. I use that. It's really good for lymphoma. And I love reishi, one of my favorite Asian herbs. I like rosy periwinkle, which is the next most powerful herb in the world. And then when I'm working with bone cancer, I have to rebuild the bone. And I use comfrey, horsetail, oat straw, lobelia, nettle, make a formula out of that, give them a tea to drink. And then I give them a pain salve. I make that by simply taking my cayenne, my mint oils, and DMSO and apply that. So any questions before I stop? So that's the first half, and then we'll go over the second half, I guess, later on. So you got all that down, right? No questions. Y'all ready to run with it?
No, there's too much to take in at the same time.
Especially in the end, you was running.
I know. I'm looking at the clock here. That's what it is.
Yeah, it is. But
That's
Now understand one thing. This is a lifetime commitment. It's nothing you're gonna grasp. I wish you could open it up and just pour it into people, but it don't work like that. I know it's a lot. I mean, I don't never stop studying. I was studying last night to about 1 o'clock. So I never stop. I mean, because you got to stay with it. So if you're intending to reach that level, you got to apply it. Now, if you intend to just be a medical missionary, it's your part-time occupation. You don't have to do this. But if you want to be the very best that God would have you to be, you got to apply yourself. And it's going to take taxation. It's going to take a major sacrifice. But in the end, it's really wonderful. I just had a lady to donate me a 25-bedroom building in Tobago. The building probably cost $3 million to build. She gave it to us to run up a small college to train medical missionaries. Now, that lady would never have given that to us if she thought that we were just playing a game. You see what I mean? And if you get serious about this work, God will take care of you. I have not worked for man in 48 years. I haven't done nothing but what you see me doing. And it's mostly, this is a sideline talking. Mine is actually treatments. And that's what I did. I worked in the clinical environment for 25 years. I didn't even travel. I didn't even give lectures. I just worked with cancer patients every day. But you have to apply yourself. We only use a small percentage of our brain power. You can use more. So I like I said, I know it's a lot, and I know it's asking a lot, but I'm like the army. I'm looking for a few women and men that's willing to go to the next level. I'm training my son right now to take over for me. So I see he's probably a couple of years away. I'm praying that God can hold me for at least a couple more years that he can get it, because I'm ready to stop. But God is blessing him. He's all his life. This is his life. God gave him to us for that sole purpose, to replace me. And he know that, and I know it. And that's what we're working on. And not only him, but you too. I want y'all to replace me.